Welcome to the Quiverful Adoptions podcast. We're your hosts. I'm Elizabeth.
And I'm Casey. We are two adoptive mamas who have walked in your shoes, so we get it.
We remember the crazy journey of adoption like it was yesterday, and we are so thankful we get to share some amazing stories with you right here from the living room of our office.
Well, actually, we're sitting in the bathroom, but the living room does sound better.
Anyway, none of that matters. We're glad you're here.
So grab a cup of coffee and join us as we dive right in. Hey, hey, hey.
Hey, guys.
Super excited to be here on this beautiful Wednesday.
Yes. Casey, tell them what we have been working on all week.
Oh my goodness, guys. We have been at the venue for the Promise Summit and up to our elbows planning that event, talking to our speakers and schedule and everything like that.
It's going to be awesome. So if you haven't yet made plans to be there, it's May 3rd and 4th, and it's in upstate South Carolina. You're going to love Greenville if you've never been here before. So go ahead and mark your calendars. And if you have questions about it, you can find most of the details over on Instagram at The Promise Summit. And there's also a website where you can go purchase your tickets, thepromisesummit.com.
Yes, you do not want to miss this event.
Yeah. So who do we have today?
Today, we're going to be with Carly Levingston. She is an adoptive mom and is the founder of the HeartGrown box at HeartGrown box over on Instagram.
So go give her a follow.
She lives in Texas with her husband and her son, and we are super excited to hear more about Carly's story, the purpose behind HeartGrown box, and how adoption has impacted her family.
So go ahead, turn your volume up because you guys are going to love this one. Hey guys.
Hey friends.
Today we have Carly Levingston with us. Carly, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast.
Hello. Thank you guys so much for having me.
So can you tell us just a little bit about yourself and how adoption came to be the way that you grew your family?
Oh, yes. Without making it way too long of a story, my husband and I, we struggled with unexplained infertility for about 5 years and counting. I guess 6 years and counting at this point. But as far as our infertility journey, it was about 4 to 5 years. And we just kind of went through all the motions, all the treatments, IVF, IUI, you name it. And it just wasn't happening for us. And there was really no reason. The doctors were kind of scratching their heads, and we felt a little bit like an anomaly. And I felt like toward the end of our second and our last IVF cycle, God was leading us toward adoption. And I could see that in different areas. And I felt like my heart warmed up toward adoption a little bit sooner than my husband's. And then he came around. It was almost like we both came around to, okay, this is what we're supposed to do on the same day. And just decided, all right, this is where God's calling us. And so we pursued adoption at that point. And it all happened pretty quickly after that.
So you've adopted one?
Yeah, we have one son. He's 2.5.
Awesome. Are y'all planning to do it again?
We'd really love to. I don't know where we're being led yet, but we've been talking about it, with our son being 2.5. We're like, okay, this seems like, it just feels like maybe the right time to be starting the process again, but we're not sure how to go about it and where to start yet. So we're just kind of praying on it at this point.
Did y'all do domestic adoption?
We did domestic open adoption.
So I say I'm a big advocate for the 3-year break.
Okay.
I think that the 3-year spread is perfect. I know you can't always time it like that, but
right.
It has been great for our family.
Oh, I love that.
I think
that's good advice.
Him being 2, you said he's 2.5?
Yes.
I think that's a perfect time to start.
Well, good. Because you just don't know how long it's going to take. In our case, I mean, I know it can take, I always tell people who ask me, 2 weeks, 2 years, you don't know what you don't know. And in our case, it was literally 9 months. It was like being pregnant and giving birth. We just didn't know that it was going to be 9 months, but another God thing, it just timed out that way. Because the moment we said yes to adoption was the month he was conceived. And then
Wow.
we brought him home 9 months later. So it's so cool just looking back in our story and seeing God in every little piece of it. Like, wow, he was really leading us. It wasn't just coincidence. He was saying, hey, this timing is perfect. So just go with
Absolutely.
it.
What do you feel like the hardest part of your adoption journey was?
Ooh, just leaning in and accepting all the unknowns, just knowing that this is kind of a funny one, just knowing that nothing was going to be in my control.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think with infertility, there's still, nothing's in our control, as we know, but with infertility, you can kind of, you're okay, I'm doing the meds on time. And, then it's going to be on this date on the calendar and I'm going to see the doctor these dates and everything's kind of controlled, like very well controlled. With adoption, you just kind of throw your hands up and you're like, okay, God,
Right.
this is what it's going to be. And my hands, I'm out. I'm out at this point. I don't have to try to control the process anymore. So I think just giving in to that, leaning into his plan and just letting it be what it would be and trusting the process and not letting myself get caught up in all the what ifs because
Yeah.
there's so many.
I think that's so important. I think that's something that all of us as adoptive parents kind of walk through at different parts in our journey because control is a tricky little lie because it's
Yeah.
one of those things that you can surrender control early on in the adoption process and be like, this is totally yours, Lord. Like you have control over this entire thing. And then all of a sudden you've been chosen by an expectant mother. And that control lie starts to seep right back in again. And it's
Yes.
like, oh, I might, this is going to work out. This is going to be great. And then she chooses to parent or,
Mhm.
whatever happens. And there is just this constant having to keep in front of your mind that you're having to surrender control constantly over and over again and really daily. So,
Yes.
How far along was your son's birth mom when she chose your family?
Yeah, I was just going to mention that because of your point you just made. They were 33 weeks. We met
Wow.
them as a couple, and they were, I mean, a week from giving birth. So it was very boom, boom, boom. I mean, everything kind of at once. And so, in a way, for me, I felt like that was a blessing because I didn't have as long to worry about the pregnancy, the
Mhm.
birth, the decision, all of it that you'd worry about if you were, chosen at 3 months along, 4 months along. There would probably be more time for me to have anxiety about all the things there's no way I could control. So yeah, they were really far along. We actually met with them, and then 6 days later, they let us know that we were chosen. And then 2 days later, we were at the hospital. So it was very
Wow.
quick. Yeah.
talk
So we
about a
just felt
whirlwind.
blindsided. Yeah. And we had just moved. So we'd been in our new house for maybe 10 days. We were living among boxes and it was nuts. But, I
Yes.
wouldn't trade it because it was like the best kind of crazy.
So, talk to us about like even thinking about going into adoption number two. I know for our family, when we started walking through thinking about, okay, this might be number two, there was so much fear there, especially because my story is very similar to yours in that my son's birth mom was very far along. We waited exactly 9 months.
Wow.
Um, and so I know that the fear crept in like, oh, that was super easy. So I'm sure this one will not be as easy. And will probably wait longer or I don't know, talk to us a little bit about, are you experiencing any of those fears just going into it and thinking about it might be time for us to start this process again?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, because it's a whole different scenario, whole different, I mean, it's going to be different birth parents and birth family and different child. And I mean, yeah, I feel like it could be completely opposite of what we experienced. And I will say it was so, well, I can't really say seamless. I mean, there's so many hard parts to adoption and the adoption process, but for what it was just, I mean, it just all happened, and with ease. Some of it, there wasn't a lot of um, uncertainty as far as them maybe changing their mind, which they had every right to. But there just wasn't that huge concern hanging over us and during the hospital experience. So you just, going into the next one, I'm like, well, could it go as well? I don't know. It may
Right.
not. And yeah, that's a scary, I guess that's the scary point. It's like, will we be so lucky again? Which is kind of silly. But yes, I feel that.
Yeah.
One of the things that Elizabeth and I talk about a lot is blind faith.
Mm-hmm.
That first adoption, you have no idea what you're stepping into. And it's a lot of blind faith, just trusting that everything's going to work out. But then, of course, after you adopt your first one and you learn and you are more educated and you grow yourself, especially you're working in the adoption community. And so you see a lot more than what a typical person would. That blind faith isn't really there anymore. You're going into it with a whole different view.
Yeah.
Yes, because you do know what you could expect. I mean, you know things could happen very differently. And I think we were pretty well prepared. Our agency, it's a pregnancy outreach and agency, and they are really amazing at educating us as we wait and answering questions because they've kind of seen it all and just helping us be prepared for all the different ways things could go. And I think that was really wise. And so we did go into the hospital experience knowing, okay, this could go one of many ways. But I think you're just so caught up, all the adrenaline, the lack of sleep, the excitement, everything, your whole world is changing. And I think you just let it go. And one of the things that one of our caseworkers very wisely told us in the hospital, holding this baby boy, kind of passing him around, just all loving on him and talking about the experience. He was like, you just got to love them. Like, you got to love these birth parents. You got to love this baby. Even if at the end of the day, you're leaving this hospital without a child, just love them in the moment. Because this may be the only opportunity they have to kind of, I don't know the love that Christ would have for us or be loved in that way. So to just show them that in that moment.
Absolutely. How has open adoption impacted your family and your entire adoption journey?
Yeah, I think it's been a blessing. I think going into adoption as complete newbies. I mean, we really didn't know much about open adoption as when we went into it, but we were educated on open adoption. And once we kind of completed that education, we left going, yeah, that's the best thing we could do for this child, for any child. I think we could really get behind open adoption. Whereas going into that, it sounded scary. And so just being educated on open adoption, we were completely on board. And yeah, I really wouldn't trade it. I think it's going to really allow him to already know kind of where he came from, what his story is, any questions that other people, as part of a closed adoption, especially some of the older generations where it just wasn't talked about. I think there's so much confusion there as to like, who am I? Where did I come from? I think they just have questions and they want answers to it. And I think we'll avoid some of that as he reaches maybe his teenage years or into adulthood where he doesn't have to question, he just knows. And if he wants to talk to his birth mom or his birth dad about anything, my hope is that they'll be there. I mean, if they choose not to be, that's a decision that they're going to make, but we've committed to being part of their lives. And it's been pretty amazing. We have a really good relationship with them, and it's even expanded out a bit. So now there's some birth grandparents now and birth great grandparents, and we've been able to meet more. And we've been blessed that, and I think this is probably unusual, but it's pretty amazing. We've invited them to his first and second birthday parties, and each year we're including more. And it's just like, it's just so cool to see, to see all these people love you. We're all family. We're just kind of made differently. But he still has that support and that love. And it's just been really cool.
So at the birthday parties, did your family or your husband's family, did they have anything to say about that? I know sometimes my family will think that it's a little weird that we have a really open adoption with my child's birth family, and they just don't get it,
Yeah.
So I would love for our listeners to be able to just hear maybe how your family relates to that and kind of how you've worked through that.
And how you navigated some of those first conversations.
Yeah, I think it's pretty foreign to most people, and I can understand why. I know that for my husband's and my parents both, I think it was kind of a foreign concept. And once we knew that, we'd kind of all be in the same room, we were like, hey, we don't want to blindside anybody on either side. So we let everyone know what was going on, and everybody was very open about it and thought that was very, very cool, and very mature, and just really special to have that kind of relationship where you can do that, because again, they didn't have to come. That could have been really difficult for them to be here, but they wanted to, and to face our families and have conversation. I know it could be awkward, and you never know what someone's going to ask. So I was just totally open if they said, hey, not interested, we don't want to be there, but they were all in. And as far as our families, we know them well enough, we trust them to not say anything weird. And so it was nice that everybody handled it really well. And, we're all people, we're all family at this point. And so it went well. And I know, there was a family member or two that they just, they'll admit that they just don't fully understand it, and they probably never will. But, it's not ours to understand. It's not yours to understand. It's not mine to understand. It's just a decision that they felt that they needed to make in this season. And that decision has, in turn, blessed us and made us a family. So, whatever brought them to this place, like, I don't understand it. I only know so much of their story, but it's kind of completed our family. So,
and I think
yeah.
what's the most important thing that you're doing is you're inviting your family members in and saying, it's okay if you don't understand this, but just by inviting them to be a part of this whole big story and this whole big thing called adoption, you're educating them without necessarily shoving it down their throat or like being super intense about it. You're educating them about it. And even the ones that are saying, we may never understand this, they will probably be surprised at how much they end up absorbing of the education that you're giving them just by inviting them to be around.
Yes.
All of them. So
yeah, it's really about what they're witnessing and what they're seeing. And I really think it's an amazing witness to a lot of people to see, like, hey, we love these people. We love them, and we want them here. And, we don't know everything, and we're not going to expect to know everything. And it was an incredibly hard decision, but here we are. And so, it's not ours to know, but all we can do is love on them.
I love that.
Good. Yeah.
So, how did your adoption journey end up leading you to create HeartGrown Box?
That's a good question. So I guess, there was a lot of, for me, and I'm sure for a lot of people too, there was a lot of waiting prior to even starting the adoption process. So it was like years of waiting, and hearing a lot of crickets, a lot of failures on that end. And then starting this process, all the paperwork, all the stuff, you guys know, everybody listening knows, it's a process. And then you're waiting all over again, but in a different way, in a more helpless way, in a sense. You're just kind of waiting. So you do all the things, and you're finally left just having nothing to do anymore once the paperwork sent in. And so for me, it was like, how do you support somebody during this wait? I mean, nobody really knows. There's a lot of sisters out there, best friends, moms, mothers-in-law. I mean, you name it. There's a lot of people that want to know how to support a family, or specifically a woman kind of going through this particular unique season of waiting. And I noticed in my situation, there just wasn't anything out there built to support this wait or encourage during this wait. So I just kind of wanted to be the person that was like, hey, I'll create something that I feel like women would appreciate during this time.
That's awesome. We love the idea behind the HeartGrown Box. I know a lot of, or several of our adoptive families have talked about it in our private support group.
Oh, nice.
So just the opportunity to encourage these women who are stepping into this adoption process and this unknown, like you mentioned, unknown weight. There's no expiration date. There's no
Right.
date that you can look forward to, like counting down to. So it is just a lot of unknown, and this, it can be a super emotionally dark place to be in.
Mhm.
We know we have seen, just from our perspective, we've seen marriages suffer, and we've seen divorces happen and affairs happen, and women who have questioned their relationship with Jesus. And I mean, there's just a lot. I know that Satan can use it to attack women during this wait, because you also feel incredibly alone.
Yes.
Even if you are tuned into a support system online of other adoptive families in your immediate community, it can seem very lonely. And so I love that this is just kind of a shoulder tap, like you're not alone. Here are some things that you can work on during your wait, that are more heart focused and are not as trying to get you there. Because I know checking into that, like you were talking about the check box, like,
Yeah.
okay, we've done the paperwork, we've done the application for the agency, we've done the home study, and so you get into this like check the box mindset, and these things
Yeah.
that are in the boxes are not necessarily that.
Mhm.
So
Yes. And I'm very task oriented, and I'm sure a lot of women are too. So it's like, okay, what's next? Okay, what's next? Okay, oh, wait, there's nothing. So I'm just
yeah.
supposed to sit here for how long, and just wait and pray about it. And, I think the wait is actually one of the most important parts of the journey. I know it can kind of be, some people can dread it, or it can seem very frustrating and long. But I just think waiting well and learning how to wait well and grow in that season is something that's very important. I don't want people to miss that.
So is the HeartGrown box a monthly subscription or is it one time?
So it's either. So people, you can gift a box and it can be one time or a subscription. You can buy one for yourself just one time, or you can subscribe. Just, it can keep kind of recurring month to month, or you can just say, hey, I'm gonna set aside, 3 months and just do 3 months of it, and it will stop after that. So you can kind of pick and choose.
I love that.
So just explain a little bit, because Casey and I are familiar with the HeartGrown box, but can you explain a little bit more to our listeners about what actually is in the box when it comes?
Yeah, yeah. So I always say, when people ask me about it, I'm like, well, it's like being pregnant without a due date. So you just need some encouragement, and it's nice to have encouragement just at your doorstep, or happy mail, if you will, just at your doorstep, something to make you smile. I love what you said about kind of a tap on the shoulder and a nod, like you're not alone. I see you, I hear you, I get it, I've been there, and there's other women, and there's a community, and you're not in this alone. So a box, shows up at your doorstep every month if you choose to subscribe, and it's usually anywhere from 3 to 5 items. And I like to curate really unique items, and I build each item around a specific monthly theme. And they're scripture based monthly themes. So, for example, I've done, choose joy, or finding purpose, or hope is my anchor. And they're usually I try to keep them kind of seasonal as well. Like, in Thanksgiving, I'll do like a grateful heart will be the theme. And I'll just kind of build around that theme. And I just kind of search and search to find just the right pieces that they can't just go find anywhere, down at the store nearby, and just kind of keep it unique. Some of the things are more adoption specific, some are not. They're just all things I personally would love to receive myself. And I try to mix it up. I don't think I've used anything similar or the same twice in almost 2 years. So it's just, I just try to keep it as unique as possible. And I just want it to uplift and encourage as much as possible.
I love that. So if we have any guys listening, Valentine's Day is quickly approaching. So
Great
this would be a
idea.
great opportunity.
Yeah.
And Mother's Day. Mother's Day is such a hard time, especially for
Yes.
us women who want to be moms and
Yes.
haven't decided that adoption is the right route yet, or they're still going through infertility
Yes.
and just haven't became pregnant. Like this would be perfect for both parts.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, Mother's Day is hard. I always try to do something a little extra special in the May box, because I remember that. I do remember how difficult that could be.
Mm. Carly, what is one thing that you would say to adoptive families to encourage them?
I think you just don't know how your story will end. Um, you just don't know. You see all the other stories and you hear all the other stories, and you can kind of see the happy ending and see, baby in their arms and all that good stuff. And that was something that, I was kind of jumping into the adoption world, and I was like, but, will that happen for me? Will that happen for us? Because in theory, it's supposed to end a certain way, and you create a family and you bring home your child, and I just kind of was like, yeah, but will that happen for me? Are we those people? And so I would try to just talk to, and I really didn't have a community of other adoptive moms. I maybe met one or two along the way, but I really didn't have anybody to talk to. And so the ones I did talk to, I would, want to ask all the questions. And it was nice to see that, you know, everything ended up well. There could be bumps along the road, but at the end of the day, it was all exactly the way it was supposed to be. So I would just encourage them that, all these stories you hear about are all beautiful and lovely and perfect, and they were crafted just for those families. Like my story is pretty incredible if you look back and you see God in all the pieces. And that was, my son's name is Kason. That was Kason's story. That was our story and coming together. And just know that yours is going to be just as beautiful, but it's going to be yours. And you will have that happy ending, and it will happen for you. But it's so hard to know in the moment. You just don't know if it will ever happen.
I love that. I was reading Sandra Stanley's comparison trap book one time. I don't know if you've ever read that, but in the opening of her book, she says, every minute you spend comparing yourself to others is a minute you spend subtly accusing God of shortchanging you.
Ooh, that's good.
And I just love that. And whenever you were talking about comparing your story to others, like we're all guilty of that. And I feel like Sandra really hits it on the head when she says that, because it is like we need to stop comparing, but it's really hard whenever you're in the midst of your adoption
Yes.
journey or
Yeah.
infertility journey.
I love that. And, comparison is the thief of joy. I mean, it's the same for this. But I needed that too. As I was starting my journey, I needed to get on Instagram and see how different families were built by adoption. Like I had to kind of touch and feel that. I had to really see it. And that really gave me a lot of comfort too. And I know my story was never going to be the same as their story. And that's okay, because mine was written just for me, and it's that much better, and it's beautiful, and I promise that's what it's going to be like for everyone. I mean, you will have your story and your child. It's just in the moment you don't see it coming. So
Absolutely.
until it shows up, and then it's quick.
Well, and today, Instagram, that's our education resource too. There's so many, like you said, it's very important for adoptive families to be very tuned in to everything happening in the adoption community, because that's where we're hearing, firsthand from birth mothers post placement and adoptees that are adults now, and adoptive parents who have said, guess what? We didn't get it right the first time, and here's how we're trying to do better. And so it's so important to be there. But I think just having the ability to also remind yourself that, like you said, your story is going to be so different, but it's going to be equally as powerful and as important. So I love that.
Yes. And I was, my husband and I were both a little bit naive as far as what the scenarios might look like. And I guess the reality is, and that hit me pretty hard, pretty fast, was how messy it can be. The reality of some people that are in really hard places, and they're choosing or having to choose adoption. It's not pretty sometimes. And I think, I just went into it not really getting that until we kind of were faced with a little bit of a scenario just very quickly. When we went live, something came up, and it just kind of hit hard. I was like, oh my gosh, this is real. These lives are hard. This is messy. And so yeah, so for those that, I don't know if it's helpful or not, but just knowing that the reality of a lot of these situations is it's a hard situation, and to just pray through it, and know that it's not always going to be clean and um, packaged, in a pretty package, if
I
that
think
makes
that's
sense.
so important. That is so important. I think that I think we're all guilty to that to a point. You come into adoption thinking adoption is something that it's absolutely not. And once you get to a certain point, you start realizing that these women are real people and they're going through different levels of hard things. And we can't win as adoptive parents or hopeful adoptive parents if we're not acknowledging that and educating ourselves and like you said, going into it and recognizing that this is not this pretty painted picture where the end result is a baby.
Right. And if everything
um
was perfect and their lives were perfectly together in that moment, they wouldn't have to be making such a hard choice. And so just to
Absolutely.
give a lot of grace.
Yeah, that's great. All the grace.
Yes, to everybody on every side of the whole scenario.
Yes. Carly, if you could recommend a book to couples who are in the wait of adoption, what would you recommend?
So I know there's so many, but for me it's actually a devotional I really enjoyed, because again, all the doing and then nothing. And so for me,
Yeah.
I needed things like this, specifically this, to kind of get me through and just keep me focused, and kind of keep me growing. And I loved the In the Wait study. It's by Holly Holt, and I have it. Actually, when I created this box, it went in my first box. I loved it so much, and I love those girls, and um, it's just perfect. And it really applies to anybody. I felt like it applied very well to infertility and to adoption, but it applies to any season of waiting, and it just kind of puts you in such a just a good zone. I would start my mornings that way. I would grab my coffee. I'd go sit in the nursery, the nursery I had kind of partially created because I didn't want to go all in. I was still a little bit scared. So I, had painted it and put a rocker in there. And I would go sit in my, unfinished nursery and just pray in there and do my In the Wait study in that room. And it was just really a special time. And it gave me something to focus on other than, fear or worry.
So, a lot of our listeners are constantly asking what are some of the Instagram accounts that they can or should follow. Do you have a favorite Instagram account in the adoption community that you recommend to people?
I do. It was kind of hard to pick a favorite. I have so many that I love and have followed or do follow, but I feel like one that really stands out to me is called A Precious Pursuit. So it's
Oh,
a
yeah.
dot precious dot pursuit. And her name is Heather. And I honestly don't know her last name, but I think you could find it with the Precious Pursuit. But she just, I don't know. She just has always been, she's so good with words, and she has beautiful pictures, which helps. But she's an adoptive mama of two little girls. And she just has a way of expressing herself and telling her story and the girls' stories in a way that's so raw and real and beautiful. And so I don't know, I just really resonate with that. And I think a lot of people do. I think she has, a great following, and I could see why, because she's just very real. And I think she just loves being a mom. She loves that she was blessed with those girls, but she's not afraid to share the hard stuff too. And I think people need to see that. There's still
Absolutely.
hard stuff. It's not all perfect. Like once you
Yeah.
become a mom, you're still a mom. When they're a toddler, you're a toddler mom. Things get hard. Just because you adopted doesn't mean it's all sunshine and roses. Like it's still, you're still a mom, and you go through all those bumps along the way.
Yeah. We
Absolutely.
love Heather. We love her heart.
Yeah.
She is one of our adoptive families. And I'll tell you, there have been times in my personal adoption journey where I've had some hard days and hard nights. And she has been such an encouragement to me.
Oh wow.
And so I would just love to share with our listeners. She is authentic and real and encouraging, both on social media and also off social media. And so that's super
awesome.
encouraging.
That's really very cool. Yeah, she seems like a really great human being.
Well, Carly, thank you so much for being on the podcast. Can you tell our listeners again how they can follow the HeartGrown Box?
Yes, and thank you so much for having me. I'm just super excited to be here. I am on both Instagram and Facebook at HeartGrown Box, and online you can find me at heartgrownbox.com.
Thank you so much. We
Yes.
really enjoyed this podcast and getting to know you.
Oh, me too. Thank you guys again. I loved being here.
Have you heard about the Promise Summit? If you are out there and you're listening right now and you are hoping to adopt, or you're an adoptive parent, or you're struggling with infertility, or maybe you feel called to adoption and you just have no clue where to start, then you need to be at the Promise Summit. Casey, tell us a little bit about what the Promise Summit is.
The Promise Summit is a Christian conference for couples considering adoption, in the wait of adoption, and or families who have adopted. This event is packed with powerful speakers, incredible worship, and a panel that represents all members of the adoption triad, and is sure to be a weekend that you will never forget. Our hope is that you leave the Promise Summit forever changed and armed with the promises from God that will encourage you throughout your entire adoption journey.
The Promise Summit will be held May 3rd and 4th in Greenville, South Carolina, and we would love to meet you there. You can find out more information at thepromisesummit.com or on Instagram at thepromisesummit.